All right, let me just pull this up here. All right. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so we are officially up. Perfect.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to kick us off, everyone, and then we're going to turn it over to someone more important than myself. Give me 1 second here. Let me pull it. There we go. I got too many audios working. Here we go. Perfect. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We've got a very special guest today. We're going to get right into things. I'm sure all of you have seen that we just released our newest Phygital Index report. Very excited to share the findings. I'm lucky to be joined by our Tillster CMO, Hope Neiman, who just presented these findings at RLC on Monday, and we said, what the heck, we're going to run it back and make sure those that could not attend RLC, we're going to do a digital LinkedIn Live for everyone to get the findings and ask questions and things like that. So without further ado, Hope, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll just take cues from you to progress the slides. So all you.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's interesting because having presented, I've had a huge sigh of relief because many of the retailers and restaurants that saw what I presented were absolutely nodding and were sharing with me that they are, in fact, the pain points. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm a glass half full kind of person, not a glass half empty, which is why this title feels a little bit glass half empty. And frankly, some of the news is that way. But what I hope to do is not just share where there is news that is problematic, but ideas on how to take what guests are saying and be able to elevate your own restaurant experience. Okay. So let's go. First, some bad news. Your guests are already outpacing you. And they are, if you look at this chart, it is actually represents the digitalization across the boards. Your consumers are far in excess of even the leaders in the space. They are using, if you think about it, people are walking around with their phone and doing it in every single context. The leaders are taking advantage of some of that, but for most people who today are followers, you're falling further and further behind. And that's an untenable position to be in, needing to take advantage of really being where your guests are. Okay. So, what do you do to keep your head above water? First of all, guest demand has never been higher. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but they are all of a sudden in a position where they feel in control. And that was a massive shift from what we've seen in the previous year. What's going to be necessary are smart tech investments. And I almost underline the word smart. A lot of brands have gone ahead and invested millions and millions of dollars in tech investments. Doesn't mean they're smart. And going forward, even some of the biggest brands have come to us that have taken some things in-house and said, hey, I can't keep up with the rate of change. It's not necessarily core and fundamental to our business. How do I invest smarter against the pieces that are really going to move the needle across the boards? I'm tired of hearing about COVID because COVID is far over. And the solutions that people put in place in order to survive COVID, which was keeping their head above water there, are not sufficient because they're not in a situation to be able to flex and grow with the changes that they're even seeing their customers are requiring of them. Part of that has to do with a tech stack being truly two-way. And what's very critical here also is having a true MarTech stack, marketing technologies, and not just the technology to enable ordering on doing it. When I say two-way, I mean the information has to come in, but you need to be able to take that information back out and make it usable across the boards in terms of what that is. And the last piece on here is growth. You need to be able to enhance features. Your guests are expecting constant growth across the boards. In fact, one of the things that's really interesting is somebody I once saw perform what felt like a magic act. But when you think about Amazon, if you were to look at Amazon on January 1st and look at Amazon on December 31st, many elements of the site look nothing the same. And if you do the equivalent of one of those old books where it's how you sort of create animation and you thumb it, you can see the kinds of very small changes that happened day to day across the site, but resulting in some really significant changes. That is what guests are currently expecting. So, how do you exceed these expectations? Well, there really are three key ways in which you need to be able to achieve exceeding those expectations. The first part is that your tech stack needs to be truly integrated. And that's not just across your consumer applications, but it's also back office. And I'm not talking about necessarily time and attendance or some of those. I'm talking about making it easy for your front end. I had an experience on Saturday night that I'm going to share for a moment, which is exactly what I'm talking about. It was raining here in Los Angeles. I was going to pick up food. I was already going to be someplace. The site that we use, which is part of a small chain, has on there, they don't have order ahead, problem number one, but they have that you can order or order in advance and set a time. They have where it's generally 15 to 20 minutes. My husband went on knowing I was about 20 minutes away and placed an order. As I was approaching to go pick it up, he pulled up the tracking that they had. Great, they have tracking. Good news. Bad news was instead of the food being ready at 10 minutes to 7, it showed that the food was going to be ready at 7:15. 25 minutes past when they said 45 minutes when they had a promised time of between 15 and 25 and 20. My husband called the restaurant and he said, "What's going on? You didn't have this." "Yeah, we know. We ran out of chicken." "Well, why didn't you change the time?" "That's too hard to do on our system. So we just don't bother with it." That's a way of creating problems for your guest, as happened to me. Understanding what those guests are on a one-to-one level is also critical. They expect experiences that are truly unique to them. And I'll talk a lot more about some of the specifics in terms of how they see it. And last year in our report, we began utilizing a term that's being used everywhere from Nordstrom to IBM, which is phygital. And phygital is not just multi-channel. It's about combining the physical with the digital world. So in a physical setting, how do you take advantage of the technology that the guest has in their hand or that you have in the restaurant? And in a digital world where they're off premise, how do you create ways of experiencing hospitality both then and when they come and they get their food? So those are sort of the three key things. And that phygital piece is really one of the elements that we're seeing that's important about growth. So let's go back to your guest for a second. I said before that guests feel in the driver's seat. I've been working in the consumer technology space for a very long time, and I've never seen the kind of shift that we experienced in the last year. And what it really is a guest saying, "Oh, thank you so much during COVID. You gave me a chance to order ahead and I could still have great food." Now, what they're saying is, "Hey, I know I'm in the driver's seat. And if you don't do what's right for me, I'm going to go somewhere else." And that means number one, making sure that I know that you know who I am. That means identifying me at every single setting that's happening across it and utilizing the information that you have about me. The second is making it easier. And that means both convenience features, but also getting rid of friction. One of the things I like to mention is when you just do a survey, consumers will always say, "Give me more discounts, give me more free food, give me more things that you're just are saving me money." But the truth is, what makes things sticky is making it easier to do something. And that's memorable to guests, and that they can't get if they cross the street and go to a competitor. This one is also really important, the next one, because consumers spoke this loud and clear. You need to be able to unify everything. And that means things not only being able to work together, like having your loyalty program work as seamlessly in a restaurant as it does when you're ordering on your phone, but also eliminating the problems. People were very, very vocal about the issues that exist in these tools working together. And the last is their preference, if they're going to work with you as a brand, is to deal directly with you as a brand. Third-party players are not going away, but there is a very strong preference for the first time in understanding what it's like to work directly with the brand. And so what it really is all about is the big takeaway is making sure that those pieces are truly unified, that they're not linear, which means connecting them, which has been the case in the past, but it's back to that two-way piece and the fact that everything is interconnected, even if it's not coming from a single provider all across the boards. So I mentioned Phygital before, and part of that is because being able to work with the digital components has become a habit. People expect when they're in the restaurant that there are technology elements they're going to be able to take advantage of, whether it's payment, being able to order directly from a table, or anything else. And these phygital touch points really are, when you use them properly, the key to be able to making more loyal customers, not just loyalty programs, but people that really think about your brand first and foremost. It's also important when it comes to increasing average check. And honestly, they can be very helpful when it comes to things like what's going on with result to staffing. So for the 6th year, we've actually conducted this research against 1,000 consumers. I believe we can't drink our own Kool-Aid or even look at our own data. We want to see what guests said they did, see if that reflects what we're seeing in our metrics, but maybe more importantly, see what they expect going forward in order to take advantage of things. So let's start with on-premise. And that's really the first phygital touch point. Kiosks, which are not necessarily the right technology for every setting, but for those people where it is, they are truly a win-win. And I want to call out a couple things about when this research was fielded. We've seen in the last 3 months big delivery and orders around kiosks, in part in California due to the $20 an hour minimum wage, but it's really happening everywhere. This research was fielded at the beginning of the year. And when we asked people what they've done, whether it was in the past year or in the past 3 months, that was even before this biggest influx. Also, all the data that's shared here is tied to restaurant, not other use cases. So the fact that 45% of diners have used a kiosk says they've been in settings where kiosks exist. And as you'll see throughout this, they want more of that. What is an astounding number is that 26% have used a kiosk in just the last 3 months. Now, their favorite restaurants may not have it, but they are someplace that they are taking advantage of a kiosk. And 21% believe that they're going to be using kiosks more in the next year. That is not just because they are frequenting a restaurant that has a kiosk, but also because they expect that more and more restaurants are going to be having kiosks available for them to buy at. Okay. I mentioned about that 26%. And what's fascinating about it is that last year, compared to last year, that is an 18% increase in the number of people who said they had used a kiosk in the previous 3 months. Anything approaching these kinds of numbers is a very significant shift in consumer behavior and in what people expect to be doing. And also, the fact that that increases there says they enjoy using a kiosk. They are going back to the kiosk rather than just going to the counter. These people are also your very best customers. Kiosks are extremely sticky. 86% of the people who said that they use a kiosk are doing it at least once a month. And almost half the people are saying they do so once a week, which says they are either going back to a restaurant that they frequent that uses a kiosk because they want it, because they anticipate doing it, but also the kiosk experience is very positive, which means if you are in a position where kiosks are appropriate and you're not using them, they're choosing to go somewhere else. But this is a way to attract and keep those customers that frequent your restaurants. When I said before, with the research, we asked what people did a year ago. We also asked what they expect to do in the coming year. And 1 in 4 of those people, full 25%, use kiosks more this year than they did last year. And I would anticipate that that number is going to be even higher as we move into next year with the influx that we're starting to see across kiosks. Okay. That's what they did last year. 20% are saying they plan to use kiosks more in the coming year. So it is something that is very much anticipated in terms of creating a base level for those guests who are frequenting QSR and fast casual restaurants. So your guests, last year we identified something that was really surprising. The people that use kiosks fall into 2 buckets. One group we're calling beeliners, who are those people who want to get through the experience faster. They love a kiosk because it's easy. I can go click, 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 versus an explorer who wants to spend time at a kiosk. In fact, I was on the phone with one of our customers just this past week, and she's relatively new to a brand that has kiosks. And she was conveying to me how it was so interesting to her because she timed about 50 people that came and used a kiosk. She says, some of these people were so short and some of these people were so long. And I was watching what they were doing. It was actually exactly what we are seeing in action. And I began to share much of this information with her, and it very much resonated with what she saw. But what isn't a difference from last year is last year we saw that mix to be about 50-50, a little bit weighed heavier towards beeliners. This year, we've seen it a little beyond 50-50 for the explorers. So the people who want to take the time to see what's on the menu. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If you walk into a QSR, you probably have a digital menu board. There are only so many items that you can list on it. You also are in a situation where somebody is unsure if they can get something on an item that may not be part of it being listed. And as you look at this, these are against people who prefer using kiosks just in the last 3 months. So I'm going to first focus a little bit on the 2024 data. You can see that almost half the people prefer the fact that they can explore more of the menu. And that represents a great opportunity for a restaurant brand to be able to elevate things that might be a higher gross margin, might be proprietary to the brand, might be able to take advantage of a way to drop more to the bottom line. You can see nobody is rushing me is that other half of those consumers to a great extent, but it's about not rushing. Some people just take a little more time and they want to feel that they don't. But the next category, it's quicker, is almost the antithesis of that. I want to call some attention to the year-over-year change, which is, wow, you can see nobody's rushing me is down 16%, but it's still at a very hefty 37. That's because we're seeing that the benefits that people are gleaning, having spent more time with kiosks, are changing a little bit. But this element of beeliners versus explorers is not changing. What's critical here also is because you have 2 very distinct groups, when you create a kiosk flow, it is not enough to just put a bunch of things on a screen and expect people to click down them. I talked before about guest expectations. Somebody who is a beeliner wants to be able to easily see that they move through. Eliminate screens they don't have to go to. They know exactly what they want. But you equally have to make it easy for that explorer to both get into things they want and maybe not overcomplicate their lives, or frankly, the lives of the people in the kitchen, if you're showing things that they are not likely to take. Walking that fine line of what that flow looks like can be very complex, much harder than you might expect it to be. Also, when we look at this issue, this is not a right slide that we're doing. Jacob, there we go. Next one. Sorry, guys, we switched this around. Jacob. Keep going. Sorry. Okay. So for you as a restaurant, how are you really getting the biggest ROI out of the experience? Because we all know that kiosks are not the inexpensive methodology, but it is surprising how fast they will, in fact, pay for themselves. Part of that is because almost 4 out of 5 people have ordered more items than they intend to. So when they're shopping across this, part of it may be nobody's judging them. So they might be upselling onto something that they were kind of going back and forth for, but they finally decide to do it. Also, it's a much easier way to increase the size of something that they are taking. You can call out things like what kind of a cost savings it is and encourage them to do so. 60% of those users have been surprised by things they could customize against. So if you were to take and show that guacamole were available to a guest on something that they didn't anticipate it, that's a big, great aha moment. Not only are you able to increase the average check, but you're teaching people that by taking a look at things that are common enhancements, they can, in fact, add them on and create a more unique sandwich experience for themselves. Next. So what would make people use a kiosk, a self-service kiosk, more frequently? Some of these are pretty obvious. Obviously, it's things like shorter lines. Interestingly, that they're saying that they want more time to explore that, which may well be coming from people who are not using them as frequently. But you can see that it still falls into those 2 buckets of beeliners and explorers. But I do want to call out the very last piece on here, which is exclusive kiosk only offers, especially in a world where there is a transition happening to kiosks precisely because of both staffing shortages and staffing costs. This is a great opportunity to find a way to rotate your guest, to encourage them to use kiosk if they haven't up to now, and be able to explore things on that menu more than they've had. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about off-premise, which is a natural place for things to be relative to digital. So one of the big surprises here, again, has to do with pickup. And I'm going to talk a lot throughout this next section about the value that pickup has taken on. First of all, 42% of the people have done pickup. That is a very large increase from where it was a year ago. But maybe more importantly, a full 30% have done so in the past 3 months. Pickup is a bright spot in terms of the kinds of offerings that are available. Initially, it was very much focused for many brands on just delivery, but 34% of the people plan to use it more in the next year. That is the highest of any disposition that we took a look at in terms of where that increase is. And the usage also showed the biggest increase over 12 months ago. So let's talk about delivery. This is for specifically restaurant and website delivery that is self-owned. So I'm not talking about third-party delivery, only that's on your own website. 36% have done so ever, but a full 25% have done so in the past 3 months. And it is right on the heels in terms of planned usage. Same number, 34%. They both did. Consumers are looking to do more with your own website. And there are some reasons I'll share shortly as to why that is in fact the case. So what about third party? Okay, 34% have done so, and 31% plan to use it next year. It's not going anywhere, but it is not as high as it has been for self-managed delivery. And I'll show you that on this next slide. So from last year to this year, the number of people who said that they used the restaurant app or web for delivery in the past 3 months was up 25% from where it was previously. That is a massive increase. And when you contrast that, while the numbers of those that still anticipate using it, the number for third-party delivery has really only changed nominally. It was almost flat from last year's data. The big emphasis is consumers really are looking to come to you when you are a favorite brand of theirs. And the fact that you also have the data to be able to reach out and get them and bring them back only further speaks to that. If you don't do it, the brand down the street is going to do it against potentially your same customer. Okay. So when you take a look at the top improvements, so what do you need to do on your app or website? As I said before, people always want more discounts. They always want more exclusive offers, but you can be really smart about how those happen. So we've been doing a series of programs where we encourage people to order just a little bit more than they have. And everybody gets a different kind of offer so that it's something that seems achievable to me. But when you add this up across an entire universe of brands, you're able to give the guest a little something, but dramatically raise your overall check. They're looking for convenience features, as I said, better order tracking. In fact, one of the things that they tend to see across self brands versus third parties is not that they're looking to see a car on a map or anything else, but they're looking for a more dependable time. They want to be able to, much like the experience I had, to be able to know when they can anticipate their food to be available to them. They want more customization options and, again, convenience features. They wanted you to remove the friction around checkout. So when you take a look at a competitor, if you're not going to give them what they want on your existing item, they're going to go somewhere else. And what are they willing to go somewhere else for? A lot of it are the things that they may not be seeing from you. Better discounts, of course, comes up again, but they're looking for, everybody's aware of loyalty programs. Is it easy to sign up on that new app? Is that new app going to be able to give me quick reordering or a personalized menu recommendation? And it appears that people are asking for these things in pretty high numbers because they're not available everywhere. And they're willing to make the switch to a brand that is in fact staying at the forefront of where things are. Okay. Pickup is a big win, but a lot of it has to do with curbside and facilitating the ability to do pickup. This was an astounding number. 89% of the guests that we talked to said that they've used curbside, but would be much more likely to visit a QSR in the coming year that had curbside available. And not only is that number in a discrete sense a very high number, but when you look at the percentage that it was a year ago, 69%, that gap of 20 points is really massive and represents a sea change in terms of how consumers are expecting the experience that they're going to have with curbside to be available. Okay. But there's a lot of room for improvement on that curbside experience. The first part is 35% of the people couldn't park where they were supposed to. And that's true. And we know that it's true across not just restaurant, but they're seeing that across. And this is what they're comparing it to. You go to the grocery store, you go anywhere, and you're supposed to park in a spot in order to have your items brought out to you. But fully a third of the people couldn't. Now, that represents something else that you'll start to see on here in a minute, which is if I can't park there and you're going to come bring it to me, now I like mystified. What am I supposed to do? Do I park somewhere? Do I call somebody? When consumers are unaware of what action to take, the anxiety that builds up makes them not want to experience that again, which means they won't come back. I found the second number astounding. Over a quarter of the people couldn't even get parking in the lot. So not only is it hard that you can't park where you're supposed to, but the idea of having to circle the block or do something else is equally, actually maybe even more so, a really tough place. And 22% of the people didn't even know. They got to the restaurant. Now they're really mystified. There were no signs. They hadn't been directed before arriving. Having that two-way communication with your guest, they know what to expect. They know what to have happen. They know what they should do if what they were anticipating didn't happen, are all really critical elements for this very important section. Okay. Keep going. There we go. So the third part is looking at third party. And I've spent a lot of time talking about third party, but I want to just highlight a couple of things. Okay. Has the bubble burst? And the answer is no. There's still very much a need for those third party providers. 45% of the people cited that variety of options was important. Sometimes you just don't know what you want to order. And so you're trying to see what looks good. Honestly, I think some of that variety may also be tied to the number of offers that they see available, but some of that is waning, as I'll share in a moment. 38% noted that it was because their favorite restaurants, where there are a lot of those are local one-off restaurants that really don't have a lot of other options in terms of how to be available for those guests, which isn't a surprise. Okay. So when you take a look at what you need to do to effectively compete against these third-party players for the part that's competing, because we also know it's sort of friend and foe, is first of all, having the best kinds of digital ordering and the best experiences are going to be important for you to keep them on your own self-managed site. The reasons that they're coming to you are, first of all, 44% of the people say it's less expensive. People are waking up to the fact that in fact, the discounts have materially changed, but when you look at a third-party provider, it's like, wow, 50% off. Excuse me, until you read the fine print and it's up to $10 and you have to spend X amount. People are also cognizant that the hard food costs is costing them more. The second is they're realizing that things like loyalty programs or offers, coupons are not available. And the less that they frequent the restaurant directly, the fewer of those that they receive. And the reasons that they want those third-party sites are tied to the things I mentioned before. In terms of people being used to it, they've been using it a lot, but it's also they find it more convenient sometimes because it is something that's familiar. It's a simple flow. They have done a very effective job of removing the friction that sometimes is seen, which comes full circle back to that first point of making sure that your site is as easy as possible to be able to get that guest to do it. Okay. Okay, so how do you keep your guests? You really want to improve your Phygital experience, as I said before, because it's really paramount to retaining loyalty and increasing average check. Okay. So 71% of guests, and this is about how they feel about you, cited that they have a favorite location for their most visited chain. And of those people, the experience being consistent was really important. Over half the people said that. That's an in-restaurant experience. So when I talk about Phygital as being both of these places tied together, that experience that you give them is critical, which is also a reason to make sure that you're effectively managing the metrics around how all of the restaurants in your ecosystem are doing, because you're not only going to lose people to a poor performing restaurant, but you may be losing people to your brand overall. On the other side in the bubble is the other half of that Phygital piece, which is people cited that it was very important for that tech stack to be consistent. And they are very frustrated when those tools don't work the same. I was read a story the other day from a third party talking about the things that make a successful restaurant. And they were saying that many consumers had shared with them specifically, which is exactly this point, that they show up at the restaurant, their points don't work. There's a problem with the way the technology was done. So they can't take advantage of something they know was free. They came to the restaurant to do it, and yet they couldn't take advantage. So a little more specifically, people will disappear without having that stellar performance of how those pieces work together. So 89% of the people said these inconsistent experiences bother them. Okay, bother is one thing, but 57% said makes them much less likely to go back to that chain in particular. That's really about, again, that in-restaurant experience. But on the technology side, this is delving a little bit deeper. 45% of the people have actually experienced tools not working the way they're supposed to, which I'll talk about on the right in a moment. And people are not only frustrated, but again, 62%, slightly more than that 57, are saying that the technology not working together is also going to prevent them from coming back. And I was astounded that people were talking about glitches in the app, the fact that things froze and didn't properly inject an order, that offers and coupons and loyalty rewards didn't work the way that they were supposed to. Payment should be basic, and payment didn't work the way it was supposed to in it. And customization, that one surprised me a little bit less, because a lot of digital applications don't allow you to do things. They create a bit more friction by either giving you laundry lists or making it really hard to understand how to go about creating that specialized order for yourself. So again, loyalty. And I've talked a bit about loyalty as in what I'll call a big L, retaining your guests, but there's also loyalty programs and what that really does. What's important about a loyalty program is those are changing as well. In the past, it's been great. You did it, you earned it, you put something in your cart. But I'm a big fan personally of being able to give somebody a free item or a discount on an item rather than an overall discount. Some people believe that, okay, it's cash, it feels valuable, but there's an added benefit on the other side, and it's tied to here. 68% of people have added additional items to their cart once they're given a free perk. So I already know what I'm going to get. So great, I'll go ahead and add something else too, which is different than just offsetting the price at a dollar amount. Also, when you put it in Flow, you can go ahead and further customize an item, which will result in people spending more money on that free item. So it may be free, but they may be putting $2, $3, $4, $5 incrementally in hard cash to you at the time they're getting it, and they're much more open to it. 41% of the people said that they've actually paid for that customization. Okay. So there are some deeper dives on all of this in terms of when we ask guests, but I want to call out a few of these very specifically. On the first one, what does it do to provide to get a frequent award? What are people's expectations about it? Honestly, I think this 22% saying they should get something every 1 or 2 visits is probably a little bit of overkill and guests demanding more than perhaps is reasonable. But the flip side of that is we are seeing, in fact, I think it was Sweetgreen was mentioning even how complex their program is. Too many programs don't consider the fact that when you look at what it takes for your average customer to be able to earn something, may take enough visits across 2 years. And that's not really creating loyalty. Almost half the people say it's about a 3 to a 5 order number. And of course, that depends on the type of restaurant it is and where people can, how expensive an order is and the anticipation, how frequently they even come to that restaurant in a year. But 3 to 5 is about right in terms of when you should be able to have an option to earn something. Perhaps to earn something higher, it may take a bit more, but you should be able to earn something there. Working across devices is, again, this seamless piece to be able to get the notifications, to be able to use it, to be able to take advantage of it. And many people also are highly expecting those loyalty programs to be personalized. So to be able to get a perk that is just for me because of something I did. And lastly, is this thing about removing the friction. Do you ask me so many questions that it's just not worth it? One of the easy ways to do that is make it simple for somebody to sign up. And then 3 months in, ask them 1 or 2 questions and throw some points or something else at them for building out their portfolio so you know even more about them, even beyond understanding what it is that they've ordered. Okay. Personalization, this is back to this one-to-one issue, is not only important because people feel good, it actually affects how they talk about your brand and how they feel about your brand. 58% of the people are likely to actually recommend a brand about after experiencing a personalized experience. And that has to do with if you're clever and you're smart and you do something that showcases your brand, it's a fun thing to talk about and say, you wouldn't believe what I just got. 33% of people decided not to order from a brand because it wasn't personalized enough. And again, in a big shocker to last year, only 21% of the people said that. So this expectation has really risen pretty dramatically in terms of not just what they expect, but the fact that they may be disinclined to even participate with the brand. So ways of doing personalization can happen in a lot of different contexts. Over half the people have actually tried an item that was personalized as a recommendation. So not just you might also like, but being able to say, because you ordered this LTO, you're going to order something. How about this? And those are things that you can do that don't require any reduction in cost. You're getting full boat on it, but you're still making somebody feel that they're special, or being able to say, let us introduce this to you first. It's going to come next week. Those are really simple things to do. Over half the people have actually taken advantage of a personalized loyalty offer. And those are great things to know about because you can use them for what are called bounce backs. So because you came twice this month, Jacob, we're going to give you something extra points next month when you come. So it's a great chance to be able to not miss out on something that would be advantageous for you. And 37% of the people have actually taken advantage of something of items that do go well together. So the last thing I want to leave everybody with is, what are those pieces? Because we've talked about a lot of stuff, and frankly, our index report is really massive. There are only so many things I could touch on. But the first is this mix and match architecture, being able to take the best tools, the smartest tools, the things that really work together, and ensure that they are working together. So all of our applications come with a consumer data platform built into it, which allows us to segment and see how people are operating across all these different components. That's a great use case for being able to call that out. The second is hey, if things are down, if things break, if there's a glitch like you saw in the consumer, they can't order and they don't feel good about your brand. So making sure that you have an optimal uptime, that you're measuring it, that you're tracking all of those things. Personalization in both an overt and a covert sense is really important. Overt in the sense of I make it really easy to take advantage of localization as an example. Localization is one that should be simple, and you shouldn't have to put in a lot of information each time to get where you want. And in a covert, that's more in a covert way. You don't have to say, I know you did this. in a overt way, being able to have the items that you've ordered previously simple and easy for you, things that meet a criteria or that filter across it. You want to have subtle but constant improvement. Guests are expecting change. We have passed the time when it's like, great, got that application up. I can now let it be here for quite some time. It is much more about needing to constantly improve, but which also gives you great news to share with your guests to bring them back, which doesn't necessarily have to participate in a discount to them. I talked about localization a minute ago, but that also means that I can auto recognize where you've ordered from before, or better yet, you're not near where you ordered before. So it might automatically put in a previous location, but now it pops up and says, hey, you don't appear to be near XYZ. Those are things that guests appreciate because they know that you're looking out for them so that you're not placing an order in a wrong location, but you're giving them the opportunity to take advantage of it. And consumers are far too smart these days for mediocre loyalty. They don't want to just get a thing I'm not sure of. In fact, interestingly, I noticed in just the last couple of weeks, Starbucks, which has been very hidden about how to redeem your points or what your points are earning for you, has been much more transparent in terms of, hey, take advantage of this. Your points are about to expire, or you have a chance to get this item with those points that you have. So even somebody like Starbucks is seeing the trend of guests who don't want to be sort of in the middle of the ground, that consumers really are too smart for this. Also, when I talk about loyalty, it is that loyalty with a big L and bringing people back. They're realizing that third parties are charging you more. They want to be sort of at the top of the game. Your platform itself, really your MarTech stack, needs to be all for one and one for all. And by that, I mean, even if you're using multiple providers, make sure you have an easy path that if something is broken or has an issue, that you're not scrambling to see where in that stack it is, that there's a methodology for seeking out those things to make your stack go down easily and quickly. It's one of the reasons we're seeing much more attachment, fewer. There may still be multiple vendors, but fewer vendors so that they have people who are managing across the stack as it is. Your data has to be two-way, truly, and touch all the different pieces because it is not enough to see how something works in one location. I'll give you an example of this, which is, so we have a AI-based recommendation engine, Recommender. When you were to talk to a brand, most brands know what their top 10 items are. What they don't realize is, and we see this in our own customers because we can manage to the data. Yeah, 7 of those 10 items might be the top 10 everywhere, but there might be a store over here where the number 2 item is really number 27 and something else is much higher because of where they are. Or even the number 1 item might represent 20% of the orders in one store, and it might represent 2% of the orders in another store. So being able to shift that data easily into places that it's meaningful is very important. And lastly, make sure that your brand experience is truly unique to your brand. People should be able to order the same way because they are agnostic these days. They are operating across every single platform in every single way, and they want it to feel viscerally just like that brand that they're engaging with. So it should not only look the same, but the ordering experience should be very reflective of what's happening. So that's my brief, or maybe not so brief, um, uh, version of what we've got in the index report, which has far more data than even I've presented here. It was extremely robust, and we're really excited to be able to share this across not just our customers, but the industry overall, and help everybody elevate what's going on across restaurant tech.
Thank you, Hope. And I'll just echo what Hope has said. That report is very, very robust. So there's only so much we can cover in an hour, let alone trying to get everyone, in and out in 45 minutes. However, we did receive a couple of questions just ahead of the presentation. So I'll just get these out real quick. Staying on loyalty, Hope. What is your best tip to help improve an underperforming loyalty program? We're present on both web and mobile. How much should I offer? What type of promotions, discounts work best?
So a lot of it depends on the nature of the brand itself. So some brands make it easy to give away free items, some don't. But the tip really is take a look at sort of different bands of customers. What are you doing to attract somebody right after they come? Are you creating kind of that muscle memory so that they take advantage of loyalty sooner rather than later? They don't forget that it's on there. That's really important. In terms of the financial aspect, we see that most programs have a payback somewhere between 8 and 10% to the guest. Make sure whatever you construct that you have enough what I'll call currency to be able to toss things at guests. Years ago, we had a customer, and at the time their loyalty program was frequency based in terms of number of orders, but it was constructed in a way that it had kind of built in one extra that could be given away free. So it was, I think, 5 or 6 items, and it might have actually been 6 or 7 in terms of what it showed. But early on in the process, we usually had them say, guess what? You've earned 1 additional free visit, which is like, wow, I don't want to miss out on taking advantage of this. So that kind of gamification in a loyalty program is also important to retain that top of mind awareness. And by the way, I had a question actually at RLC related to loyalty on this, which I'm going to call out. A more full service brand actually asked me, how do we do this? We don't want to diminish the value of our food items. And what I shared with them is there are a lot of things around hospitality that they can also create. So if you're a member of this, maybe for every 3rd visit, there's an appetizer that's come in conjunction with something else. So it's not giving away a lot, or it's not calling out the value of how much you have to spend against it, but making that guest feel special and maybe even surprising them like, hey, I'm welcome. We're glad you're back. Last time you ordered a round of, Cokes for the table. Would you like the same thing again? Those are things that make you feel special and endear that customer to your brand and just start the whole experience feeling very positive.
Love it. We're going to go to kiosks and then come right back to loyalty. Loyalty is a popular topic here. On the kiosk front, and we just hit on all of this. Amid the labor wage increases, how should brands approach adopting a kiosk program to help offset costs? And specific to Tillster, how have brands been successful and what makes the program unique?
So one of the things, and it's actually it's tied a little bit to a question that I got at RLC as well, which is, okay, is it countertop? Is it freestanding? Whatever. What's really critical about a kiosk program, 2 things, which have nothing to do with the flow, which I'll talk about in a minute. The first is, where is it placed? And by that, I mean, it has to be intrusive. I have a restaurant not far from my house with a top 5 brand in the country. And the kiosks are on this side window that, especially if it's certain times of the day and the sun is shining in, you don't even realize they're there. So you're making a beeline to the counter, but you're totally unaware of being able to take advantage of a kiosk. That's a bad move. And that's really important at being able to elevate it. The second piece, again, tied to the restaurant, is how do you deal with the hospitality piece? So now you're getting them to order and take advantage of this, but do you have somebody who's looks like they're cleaning tables and is taking advantage of things that make me feel like, wow, this is a restaurant I want to be in? Because there's not a lot of value necessarily in taking the order. The second piece on making a kiosk program work is many people that start with a kiosk program believe that the flow is just like a big mobile phone, and it's not. And can go on for about 40 minutes specifically about what makes those flows different, but they are different. And just think for a second, you're in front of a big screen. The actions that you take on your phone are very different. So, you're using your thumbs on a phone, so the lower area is important. On a kiosk, it's much more comfortable to reach up than it is to reach down. You're overwhelmed with the degree of real estate. So how you place things, a kiosk flow really is unique and different from a mobile phone.
Appreciate the insight there. All good stuff. The last one I have here, going back to loyalty, the report calls out a continual, gradual shift from guests going to restaurant-owned channels from third party. What is your best tip or piece of advice to help convert more third-party guests to own channels?
So, there's a lot, and it depends on your own brand. One of the things that I've seen is that even getting them so let me step back a second. First of all, many of your guests that are in restaurant now, unlike the past, are actually coming to the restaurant for some of their visits. Make it easy. Put a QR code to download. Tell them that if they put in some special code when they're in the restaurant, that when they're ordering remotely, you're going to give them something special to try it. So you have to be able to make it really simple for them to get off of the habit that they had on it. I will also tell you that one of the things I heard from someone at the show, and I think it's a great piece, is that on all of their orders, it's actually a pizza brand, they write a thank you on the top of the pizza box, and they write the phone number. It says, should you have any issues? Because one of the big things, and we saw this, that people have with third-party providers is they don't know where to call if there's any kind of a problem. The fact that this restaurant is being very overt about saying, most people shouldn't have an issue. But the idea now that to a guest, wow, when it came from the direct restaurant, it said who to call. They don't do that when they do third party. And the reason is when there's a problem, it could be the third party's issue and you shouldn't be calling the restaurant. It's too complex to do that. So I really like that as another option as part of it.
Love it. That is all the questions that we had leading up. I want to thank Hope again, and I want to thank everyone who has tuned in. Again, as we have mentioned many times over, very large report, a lot of great information in there. I just dropped the link in the comments. If you haven't checked it out already, go to our website. It's under our resources page, and you'll see the whole list. And if you guys do have questions, feel free to reach out to Hope directly on LinkedIn. You can reach her there, or if you've received any of our marketing communication, you can reply directly to us as well. So Hope, I will give you the final say, and then we will sign off.
I don't have much, just said enjoy. And I hope that everybody's helping to promote really how to keep people coming to restaurants and taking advantage of the industry.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time.